This, okay.
There we are. We are live a whole 6 minutes early today for our Facebook Live with Angie Kingdom, who I'm really looking forward to chatting with. Angie, we met on a business app, and I know your business is
Mhm.
around 9 months old,
Yeah.
but your practice goes a lot further than that in terms of looking at plant medicine and holistic healing. Also, I'm seeing. Well, we'll go through it. I'll have you introduce yourself. That's not, I won't read your bio.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me, Angie. Can you introduce yourself and what you do to the community?
Yeah. So thanks for having me. Very grateful to be on this platform. So I am a trauma guide. I go by loads of different names. So trauma guide, herbalist slash book, bush doctor, sacred medicine journey guide. But essentially, what I do is help people heal in whatever way that may look like on different levels too. So whether it be psychologically, physically, stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I do. Yes.
Angie, how did you get into this? This isn't exactly something that, I know, from what my experience, I'm a lot more people who are on this journey, on this path, are coming into my life, perhaps
Mhm.
because, as a white-bodied privileged man, I've grown up in a very kind of a system driven way of seeing life. But I've been very fortunate over the last few years to have people come into my life and show me new experiences, just new ways of looking at things that have helped me as a person just kind of look outside my perspective. And my perspective has, I would say, has grown. And where I can look at, say, plant medicine and holistic healing and energy work, other things that maybe I would have struggled with
Mhm.
several years ago. I now am very much more open to it, and that's why I think
Yeah.
people like yourself come into my life. So, can you explain maybe how your journey was, where you discovered, this love of what you do,
Mhm.
um, and then we can kind of get more into the trauma type
Yeah.
work because I'm very interested in that. And I'll share more with you about my story
Mhm.
too. But so, how did you get to where you are today?
So I think growing up, it wasn't conventional. I was born in Jamaica. My mum had me very young. So I was given to my dad and his family, and they kind of raised me. I came here when I was 5 years old. And, I kind of felt out of place. I was coming to a new family, people I didn't know, but everyone embraced me. And growing up, well, coming over here and growing up, I was bullied for a while in primary school because I had a thick Jamaican accent. I
Mm,
didn't know how to, I knew how to read and write, but not as good as everyone else at my stage. So I struggled a lot as well during primary school. So there was a lot of bullying and stuff going on. At home, it was a very tense environment. I spent a lot of time alone as well, with my little sister. So I realized that it was in those times that I kind of tapped into the spiritual side of things without knowing it. Obviously, like I would sit and I would speak to myself, and I would not say hear voices, but you have your inner voice that you speak to, and they will give you messages and stuff like that. So that's when I kind of started to tap in. Um, Going to church as well with my family. I never fit in. I don't felt like I fit in or church is where I was supposed to be. I didn't like going. My grandma would take us as well. My mum would take us, and it just never sat right with me.
mm,
So going through life now, growing up, got to secondary school, and I became, I started to excel, um, education wise. So from the bullying in primary school and not being on par with my peers, I began to excel. Um, kind of lost the spiritual side of things because I don't know. And then again, going through life, I kind of tapped back in and experienced some stuff, the trauma stuff we said we'll talk about later. And that kind of catapulted me into the healing and tapping back into my spirituality and using that to guide and, help me along the journey. So yeah.
wow, thank you so much for sharing. I identified with an awful lot of that. It's really hard, like, when you talk about your childhood and growing up and kind of feeling like lonely,
Mm,
And as soon as you said that, it just kind of, I was just like, wow, you know, that really reminds me of, well, it's saying lonely, even though I had my sisters and my mom and dad around, I just felt like I never fit in, you
Yeah.
know, and even though I looked like I fit in, I talked like I fit in.
Mhm.
I academically, I struggled and I used sport as a way to kind of, again, to help me fit in. But there was just this feeling inside. And, you know, I can trace back some things that happened as a child where I grew up very fearful, you know,
Mhm.
so at the core of me was a scared child who in many ways really never grew up.
Yeah.
And in you know, I'm physically, I grew up, and in terms of, again, as an athlete, I grew into a body that was quite athletic, but there was still this scared 8-year-old boy. And I suppose what we do when we're young is we develop coping mechanisms, you know, like,
Yes. You
and
know.
sometimes, you know, they can turn into be assets as we grow older. Like I used to fantasize a lot. I used to get out of my head. So when I was in school, I was daydreaming all the time, and I was really hard for me to focus, and I struggled reading because if I was asked to read out loud, I could read. I had to read word for word. I couldn't skip ahead and read like most people. So it
Yeah.
was one. So I got picked on by people and by teachers, and they thought that I had, you know, learning difficulties because of my reading, when really I would just get really into the whatever was being, and I would think I was there,
Yeah.
or I would spin it and I would make the story myself, and then I'd go off into some other world. It was really strange. But I realized that it was just the way my brain was, and because I suppose things like that weren't recognized much when I was a child. I'm 51 years old, so I got picked on and bullied from it too, and it was just these feelings of feeling very lonely. But then these things that I do became assets when I grew up. Like I became a very good manipulator,
Mhm.
because I could charm my way in and out of any situation. So those defense mechanisms became assets, and then they started to become hindrances in my life.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
And sorry, it's
no,
funny
carry on.
you say that because when we speak about growing up physically, but we're emotionally stunted at that age, it's that inner child. And as children, when we develop these coping mechanisms, they are kind of spells that we've spoken over ourselves unconsciously. So like in situations where we're small and we weren't listened to, our opinions weren't heard, we then shy away, we stop communicating. And then in adult life, we have communication issues. You know, we
Mm,
don't know how to speak up for ourselves, set boundaries and stuff like that. And it does become, at first, it's okay. But once you start walking the path you want to walk, you realize that, do you know what? I do have these issues and I need to heal it. And sometimes you don't have the people around you that are on that mindset when you start to change and realize that you need to make a change. So it's sometimes you don't have people to reach out to and stuff like that. So it can be hard. But yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of inner child work, especially recently. Like I feel like I'm coming into myself again. I made a
mm,
post on Instagram the other day and I said, are you in communion with your inner child? You know, are you doing things that made you feel good when you were younger? Because those are the things that in the adult life will help you heal. So, you know, I paint, I sing, I dance. I was on the weekend, I was with a group of women in the park and literally we sat for hours and we just spoke, we listened to music, we laughed, we cried, and it was just amazing because I thought these are the stuff that I did as a child, you know, and it's the stuff that's helping me heal and helping me on this journey. And because I had felt recently as well that things had kind of slowed down for me business wise and stuff like that, came to realize it was like the universe or that spirit saying to me, you need to slow down, take a step back, and this is what you need in order for you to move forward, you know, to release the stagnant energy, to become
mm,
more of yourself so you can actually put your truth out there, you know. So yeah, it's all about the inner child. Sometimes we have to go back and nurture that inner child because that inner child still walks with us today. It's still it's still in everything that we do. Unconsciously, sometimes we don't realize that what we do in life is not exactly what we wanted to do when we're younger, but it's a part of it. You know, it's things that we've learned here, it's things that we've learned there, and it all kind of forms into what we do. What we
mm.
end up doing is lessons, is teaching some things that look unfavorable were actually working in your favor at the time to make you who you are. So yeah, it's important that we nurture that inner child wherever we are in life.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. And it's yeah, not to point fingers, to a scared 8-year-old boy and just say, hey, I got you, buddy. I
Yeah.
understand. And it's interesting you talked about boundaries, because as soon as you see boundaries, I think about people pleasing. And that was
Mm.
something that I was doing an awful lot. I still do to this day, is I have a really hard time with the no word.
Yeah.
And I'm what I am learning is that sometimes, saying no it's the best way to go, but I have a really, really hard time doing it.
Yeah.
And I've realized that it's actually quite selfish of me, like a lot of people think that they're people pleasers because they're being unselfish, when realize
Mm.
what I've realized is it's actually the opposite. It's an extremely selfish action to be this people pleaser all the time, because we can't be. We're not designed to be. So yeah, that as you were talking about boundaries, that's what was coming up in my mind, is the idea of people pleasing. But I also I'm thinking about, as you talked about the inner child, and I'm thinking about
Mm.
trauma, and how a lot of people think that trauma needs to be like physical, where maybe uh you had physical abuse as a child, but um which in my case it was around. It just wasn't so much on me. It was more on my sisters and my mother, and that's where I really felt a lot of fear. The trauma was in seeing it and hearing it,
Yeah.
and that what I've realized is that these, or again, it's this learning. I haven't realized it. I'm being taught it, that these traumas are things that happen to you when you're younger that kind of create a dysregulation with your nervous system and with your thinking system and with your feelings. So it kind of puts us off a little bit.
Mhm.
And I ended up using alcohol as a very heavily as a coping mechanism, where people were like, you need to stop drinking,
Mhm.
and realize what happened was I needed to treat the trauma.
Yeah.
And as you said, kind of go to that inner child and let's start working back with then, and the things that I saw and heard, that
Mhm.
made me feel so scared. Then trying to alleviate those fears and realizing that they happened a long time ago. They weren't my fault. And that today I can accept that and move forward, and again treat the trauma.
Mhm.
So in terms of your learnings around trauma work, what are your, I suppose, what is your definition of trauma, and how do you kind of deal with somebody who says that they want to come to you because of trauma healing, or because they need trauma healing?
So my definition of trauma, I don't really have one, to be honest, because it's different for everyone. As you said, it doesn't specifically have to be physical. There's anything that affects you in a way that it may hinder you in life, you know? And when it comes to people coming to me for trauma healing, the first thing because I have a like step to healing guide,
Mhm.
and the first thing that I need them to do is realize that nothing was their fault, you know? And firstly, forgive themselves, because sometimes we hold on to this guilt, and realistically we don't need to have guilt over anything because it wasn't our fault. Sometimes life happens to us, but it's not actually happening to us, happening for us, you know? So it's releasing that guilt. And also, I don't know, I feel like looking in within yourself, being honest and open with yourself is really the key as well. Because if you can be honest and open, and some people don't like to face their traumas because it means actually going back and
Mhm.
rehashing everything that happens. And sometimes you have to do it in detail, because if you don't do it in detail, you can't specifically pick out what it is that's hurting you, you know? And that's the thing, being honest. And if you're not ready to be honest and open with yourself, then I can't help you at this moment. I can help you get to where you need to be, and then we can carry on. But I need you to come to me ready to actually make the change and do the work, because it's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. But at the end of it, when you come out and come into the light, you're going to be a brand new person, you know?
Mhm.
But you have to go into, I call it the void. You have to go into the void. You have to go into the darkness, into the shadows, and work your way out of it. And I say it because I went through this, so I can say that. I mean, trigger warning, because I'm going to speak
Mhm.
about sexual abuse now, right? So when I was younger, I went through a lot of sexual abuse. From I think the age of 5, I was molested, and then the age of 14, 15, I was raped, you know, and then 16, I was raped again. So, and then I had my daughter as well. So that was a part of the trauma as well. I got pregnant at 16. So it took me quite a while. It was when I got to about 18 that I realized that I'm holding on to so much and I didn't realize it. And after I came to that conclusion that I'm holding on to so much, it's like everything in my life started to fall apart. I felt like everything was falling apart for me, and it sent me into this darkness. You know, I was existing day to day, but I wasn't I wasn't really existing. You know, I was going through life experiencing, but it was like a blur, you know? I was there, but I wasn't really there. I was there to look after my daughter, but I wasn't really experiencing the fullness of life. And I didn't speak to my family or friends or anyone really for about 2 years. For about 2 years, it was me and my daughter, and that was it. And I was forced, I feel like I was forced to really look at myself and pick apart these things and really start to forgive the people that did these things to me, not because, you know, because it was more not forgiveness for them, but forgiveness so I can let those things go, start to release them, you know, and then start working on my body as well, because trauma is stored in the body in different ways. For women, a lot of the time when it comes to sexual trauma as well, it manifests as things to do with the ovaries, you know, polycystic ovaries, stuff like that. So it was looking at all of those different aspects. And that's how I kind of started to get into my understanding of what it really is to be traumatized, firstly, but also how it manifests in the body and how to actually start healing, because it's not just a physical thing, it's mentally as well. You know, that trauma made me feel like I wasn't worthy of love. So I was then going out and I was using men basically. I was using men because I was trying to find something that had been taken from me. And I realized I can't do that because I'm never going to find that again. You know, I had to be honest with myself. You will never find that again. So you need to stop doing what you're doing and really go into yourself and look at what you need to heal. Because those people that you want closure from, you want an apology from, it's not ever going to happen, you know? And at the end of the day, I think it's definitely about accountability as well. Because I think with trauma, especially, we can go into adult life and be stuck in our ways. Because I will admit, I was quite toxic for a while as well because of my traumas. You know, I would use people, I would try to manipulate them, and you know, because if you do things my way, then you won't hurt me. You know, but if you do things your way, there's a possibility that you might hurt me. So it's also realizing that when you're an adult, the things that you do out of trauma, you have to be accountable for as well. You need to pull yourself up about it. You need to say, this is coming from a trauma response and I need to sort it out, because I cannot go out projecting this onto the world and projecting it onto other people. So other people are a reflection of us as well. You know, so when we see people and we start speaking to people and we think, oh, we don't like this person. Sometimes we need to think, what is this person trying to show me about myself? We meet a narcissist, you know, where you go into a relationship and the relationship is horrible. We end up leaving the relationship. But what was that narcissist showing me about myself? There must be some traits in there, you know, because we attract what we give out, you know? And you know, I don't wish for anyone to meet a narcissist or be involved with anyone who will inflict trauma on them. But it's about accountability and honesty and being truthful with yourself at the end of the day. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm so sorry to hear about, you know, what happened to you growing up. Nobody deserves that to happen to them. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. I am grateful that you have found your light and that you're there now to shine light for other women in particular who've gone through or going through very similar situations, because you are showing them hope. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm interested to know the trauma though, how did it manifest itself with you before you realized it? Like, you know, we talk about how we can feel trauma in the body more when we're aware of it. So what was it like on that journey of like the not being aware? I know you said that you acted out and you used, you know, people for I imagine affection and love. But did you feel it in your body? Because this is something that I'm interested for people to know about, is that our body is trying to teach us as well as it's our first teacher, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, definitely. So for me, I said I got pregnant at 16, and looking back, I didn't know at the time, but the whole birth process and pregnancy was also a manifestation of that trauma. Obviously, my womb had been traumatized, and the whole pregnancy, I was in pain. I was in and out of the doctors. I didn't even actually go to the hospital or doctors until I was 5 months. I was depressed, you know, but it showed up as well after, during the birth. It was painful, very painful. I was in labor for 4 days, and some stuff after that. And then after I had my daughter, I started putting on weight, you know. I started having issues with my ovaries. I had polycystic ovaries, a lot of bleeding and stuff like that. I started getting a lot of spots and stuff on my face. I was thinking, I don't know where these things are coming from, you know? And I wasn't realizing that it was so much emotions that I hadn't been dealing with. They were just manifesting as all these health problems, you know? And that's why as well, I'm very into not using Western medicine as much, because that only cures the manifestation, the physical issue. When
Symptoms, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Realistically, a lot of things are from the emotional side of us. And when emotions are strong and they're potent, that's when they manifest, you know. So those were the kind of things. It was the weight gain, it was the issues with my ovaries. I had lost 2 children as well. I had 2 miscarriages. And that kind of showed me as well that the trauma I was holding on to was not allowing anything else into my body. I wasn't able to carry life because I was carrying death and all of these things inside me. So it was with introspection, having to actually sit down and figure out, why is my body, the vehicle that carries me, this vessel, breaking down on me? You know, what is actually happening? Because it's not outside forces, you know, it must be something internal. So yeah, then I started to work through my emotions and I changed my diet up a little bit. I took accountability for the foods I was eating. I was eating a lot of junk and stuff like that, because we have to also realize that trauma also manifests in what we eat as well. You know, if you're eating a lot of sweet foods and stuff like that, that is a sadness that we're trying to feed, you know. So yeah, I had to take accountability there and start changing and doing a lot of lifestyle changes, going to do exercise and as well as doing the mental stuff as well, you know. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the word accountability, because there's a lot that you said there that I want to kind of get into again, but the one thing that really strikes out is this accountability, because I know that as someone who's working on my healing and my journey all the time, the transformation that I'm going through, the accountability part of things for someone like me is very easy to kind of go, even for myself, because I prefer to be accountable to other people, because I have that tendency of, looking for a donut, to fill that hole. So like food is my big kind of crutch, which is kind of ironic, using a donut that's got a hole in it to fill me that's got a hole in it. It doesn't really work. It's really, it's basis, the basis of my business, Retribe, was all about people finding accountability to other people who had similar challenges to them, because it created this bonds with it, which were to incentivize me, to actually do the things that you talked about that you're doing, which is like changing up my diet, looking at more physical exercise, looking at more human contact and like honest, compassionate human contact with people, trying to get out of myself that way. So when you are on your journey, when you started your journey, did you have accountability to other people, maybe outside of your family and I know you have your daughter. I suppose that's the number one accountability, because they're dependent on you. But do you have anybody kind of in your inner circle that you were accountable to, and they held you accountable?
No, not really. And that was the issue, because I think if it wasn't for my daughter, I said she's my life saver. If it wasn't for her, I would not have taken accountability for my actions at all, because now I had a life I had to look after, you know. But I think, especially within the Black community, there needs to be, we haven't really had, or our parents and grandparents didn't know how to heal from traumas, because we obviously have a lot of trauma stemming back from back to slavery. We have a lot of sexual trauma from slavery. We have a lot of trauma from families being split up from slavery and stuff like that, and that has manifested into our reality now. We're still carrying those traumas because our grandparents, their parents, our parents didn't know how to deal with those things. They didn't have that access or any community to deal with those things. Our communities have been broken up, and to this day you can see it in the systems. We have a lot of single parent families and stuff like that, and I hate to say it, but my story is not unique within my community anyway. It's not unique. My mum went through the same thing. My aunties went through the same things. A lot of women who have gone through the same things as me, but they have not had anyone around them to help them. So when it comes to accountability, we don't really have that many people around us within our own communities who can hold us accountable, because they can't even hold themselves accountable. So that's also why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I want my people. Sorry if you can hear my birds in the background, but that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I need to be someone who can hold my community especially accountable, because what our parents don't realize as well is, in a lot of cases, they've also helped in traumatizing us. I was very lucky that my mum, when I told her what happened, she acted immediately. She believed me. There's a lot of women who would tell their parents and they won't believe them. They have to live with it, and they have to sometimes live in the same house as the person who abused them. So when it comes, as I said, when it comes to accountability, I didn't really have anyone around me to hold me accountable. I really had to I was forced to look at myself. I was forced to look my daughter in the eyes and think, if I carry on like this, I might actually lose my daughter. I might lose my own life. There was a few times I tried to take my own life, but yeah.
The intergenerational trauma is something that I'm very interested in too. Again, coming from the background that I come from, I don't really feel that. But I know that learning, I think just before we went live, I was talking to you about, one of my biggest teachers telling me to read a book. And this book is all about the polyvagal nervous system, which is a nervous system that goes from our head all down to our gut. And it regulates our emotions. It regulates how we're feeling, and it can feel traumas from 2 to 3 generations ago, maybe 4 generations ago. And a lot of people are going, well, that's just nonsense, Nick. But this is something that they're being able to see and chart that these intergenerational traumas exist. And I think that is something, if you hear it and you're coming from a background where there is a systemic oppression or traumas that have happened to your lineage, look into it. Because for me, I'm close to it, coming from Canada, that my father used to teach on a Indigenous tribe, so I learned a lot about what colonialism did to Canada and to North America, and how many young Indigenous people are still they're walking around wondering why they're feeling the way they are, and it's because of the ancestral trauma that's happened to them. So it's something that I urge anyone that might be listening to this intergenerational trauma thing and thinking that we are just beings born once and that's it, that there's science now that's looking at this how these traumas can be transmitted from one person to another. And even interwomb trauma. There's a great doctor named Dr. Gabor Mate, and he speaks of, he's an addiction specialist, and he says not everybody who has trauma ends up becoming an addict or an alcoholic, but all alcoholics and addicts have had some kind of trauma. And again, some people might be going, well, I didn't have any, I can't remember anything, but it might be something that happened to your parents. I know my father, who was an alcoholic and had a very abusive childhood, and I learned about my dad and what he went through. I listened to some of the things that he told me, and my sisters have told me since. And it's like, wow, he did not have it easy, and the things that happened to him, inadvertently got passed on to us. And so I think that I think taking accountability means really looking at you as a person, as a being, and thinking, what can I do to learn more about myself? Why am I feeling these ways?
Yeah.
And be curious about it, because I think that we are responsible for our own healing. And if you think you have no healing, then fine. But if you're feeling restless and kind of not, you get those kind of things or manifestations of that you talked about, and I know your manifestations are very um uh relevant to what you went through, but other people might be wondering why something has happened to their body when nothing's actually happened to them. So be curious about it.
Yeah.
And how exactly is it that people who are coming to you, what are they coming to you with? Are they just kind of discovering some feelings where they're not feeling quite right, or that they're not in the flow? Or are they people coming to you that with known traumas, or is it a bit of both?
So at the moment, it's people coming to me because they're feeling stuck, they're feeling stagnant, they are quite confused, and then when I start digging, I realize there's some trauma there. No matter what, at what level it's still trauma. And once we start looking at certain things, we start figuring out, okay, maybe this is why you feel stagnant. Maybe the trauma here is that you keep giving too much of yourself, and you've given so much that there's nothing left of you, you know? So those are the kind of people that are coming to, but also it's not just trauma, it's also generational karma, because karma is a big thing. We have our own karma, and we have the karma of our parents and our grandparents. And the reason we have those karmas is because they didn't do the healing, And if you don't do the healing, I'm sure a lot of us have heard that whatever you do will come back onto your children. That's the karma, And it may manifest in different ways. It may manifest in different ways. It might not manifest the same way it did in their lives, but it's still karma that needs to be dealt with. And we all have karmic debt, whether we like it or not. So for some people, going on that journey of healing, changing the way they bring themselves to the world, really discovering who they are and who they're becoming and stuff, doing that actual work is healing the karma of their bloodline, It's freeing the road for them to do what they want to do in life. Because sometimes our parents' karma and our grandparents' karma will have us feeling stagnant. So part of the work is not just healing our traumas, but also healing the traumas of the ones that came before us, so we can then go forward in our road. So yeah.
Do you have any history or lineage of healers in your family? Yeah.
So I've been doing some digging with my biological mum, actually. As I said, she had me very young. She had me through trauma as well. And when I was 16, I started speaking to her for the first time. And over the years, we've tried to develop our relationship. I'm at the point now where I've started doing some digging on her side, because obviously I have no information about them. So I'm digging, and I'm realizing that my people come from, the indigenous people who were on the land, before the slaves came over and stuff like that. So the indigenous Indians. So I come from people who were healers, And when I found that information out, it just made so much sense to my life, the things that I actually do, the ceremonies and rituals I have in my life, the spirituality I practice. It just made so much sense to me. I said, yes, I know where I come from now. So the indigenous Indians is where I come from. So that's where the healing side of things for me comes from. And it was really enlightening to find that. So after I found out that, I went on a sacred medicine journey to kind of dig deeper into where I come from, the people I come from. I wanted to meet them, Obviously, when you go into these journeys, you don't have a choice in what you experience, So I had set an intention. I had did a ceremony and ritual before. Say I wanted to meet my people, I wanted to meet my ancestors. I wanted to see where I came from, the people I came from, the spirit they carried with them, And I got the information I needed. I got so much enlightenment as well. And I got to meet some of my ancestors, which may sound crazy to some people, but I got to meet them, you know. They were Indian looking people with curly hair, you know, they were sitting in this red grass, red dirt. And I was like, this is where I come from. This is my calling. And that's why also in the last few months, my business has kind of been transforming a little bit, because it's like, since I've gone on that journey as well, it's kind of showed me the direction I need to go in. Because when I first started my business, I was just an herbalist, you know. I was I knew I wanted to do something bigger. I knew it was supposed to be something, but I didn't know what it was. So it was like I needed to go on this journey. I needed to do the digging. And now the business is transforming into more trauma healing, more empowerment, more just everything, you know, for my community in particular. So yeah, that's where the healing comes from.
Your lineage comes from Jamaica, right?
Yes. So
And
the Arabians.
Arawak Indians, yeah. How far back did it go for you? Like when you're, and first of all, can I ask about the ceremony? Was it ayahuasca? Was it?
No, so it was just mushrooms actually.
Okay.
It was inspiring. But
Yeah.
I think that it was the ceremony that really gave what I needed to get. Because so before I go into the actual ceremony, what I did was I did my own ceremony, because obviously I practice traditional African spirituality, right? So I did my own, which was where I consulted my ancestors and I asked them to guide me on this journey, show me what I need to know. I cleansed myself with the smoke cleansing and stuff like that. And then I actually took the medicine, you know, and at first I was like, nothing's happening. And I went to sleep and I woke up and I just started vomiting, you know, and that was the kind of, the cleansing had worked. The mushroom is starting to work, because in order for you to actually go on these journeys, and people who do ayahuasca as well, I think that mushrooms is kind of like ayahuasca, but it's completely different, if it makes sense. But you have to have that purging before you go into that, because you need to be a vessel, you know. So I had that purging first, and then when I finished that, I kind of just laid on my bed and realized that I wasn't seeing my bedroom anymore. It was like glass, but rainbow, you know? And then, I don't know, it was just, I had to explain it properly. You have to give me some time, because it's just amazing, you know?
Yeah.
I started speaking, you know, I was asking questions, and my ancestors were coming to me, not just was my like recent ancestors as well. I had an auntie who died a few years ago, and a grandma who died maybe 10, 12 years ago now. They came to me first, told me how proud they are of me, stuff like that. And then I went even deeper and went to speak to my ancestors from the Indians, Arawak Indians, and they were telling me what I need to do in order to get to where I need to go. That I need to stop hiding myself from the world, because I have so much to give, you know. I got so many messages. I saw so many signs and symbols. I saw birds and stuff like that, which was really, when I came out of the experience, I realized the first tattoo I ever got was of a bird on my shoulder, you know, as told that's my spirit animal, that's the animal that guides me. So now, after going through those experiences a few times and learning the lessons and implementing them and seeing how healing it actually is and has been and transformative, I've started to help others on that journey as well, if they choose it, you know, to help them get deeper within themselves. Because you can do a lot without it, but with it, it's a different level of transformation. And I only recommend people go on that journey if they actually have a guide who knows what they're talking about and are actually ready to discover themselves. Because yes, it was a beautiful experience, but also I cried for ages afterwards, because I thought I was doing the healing work, which I was, but it revealed so much more darker parts of myself as well that I needed to face, you know? So yeah, I enjoy helping people on the medicine journeys as well. And I do it in a very holistic way, you know. You come and you're comfortable, I'll give you live foods afterwards, you know, fruits and stuff like that, just to make it smooth and everything. But yeah, it was amazing. And I wish more people, when they're ready, will come and do it as well.
I have no doubt that you'll be very busy over the coming months and years to come, because I feel that there is a curiosity with humanity to understand that we have evolved the way we've evolved and gotten to where we are because of ceremony, because of evolution, because of our relationship with Lady Gaia, you know, and these plant medicines are of the earth. And I truly believe that they are there to produce enlightenment, awareness, give people
Definitely.
vision, and I'm sure that the tools that we've been given to get to where we are have come from probably a lot of psilocybin, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm very interested in it. I also do believe that, like you say, it is for some people, and I've always wondered why. Like, you know, I identify as an alcoholic, which means that, you know, for over 6 years, I've not thought about a drink because I've had a transformation in me that was brought about by a 12-step program. And I feel amazed by it. And I feel like, you know, how could this obsession to drink alcohol be lifted from me? Because I've become more aware of the universe, you know, and our interconnectedness as human beings, and that there's this infinite universe around us, or our finite selves. And I think we live in a world today that wants us to live in a silo of self, but we are coming out of it where people can be curious about you know, transforming and being able to heal. And this is where I was like going, why is it that I cannot drink alcohol safely? And I thought about it, Angie, and I was like, maybe through evolution and through tribes, when people were doing their ayahuasca ceremonies, maybe I, like, my species of person was designed to keep an eye on everyone when they were purging, so that they didn't get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. Now, it's a complete guess, but it's something that puts me at ease, that realize that, where I go, oh, do you know what? Maybe I'm a guardian, or maybe I'm just a protector when people are having their experiences. So it isn't for and for me, although I love the idea, I love hearing people's stories of having their plant medicine journeys. I think I'm the one designed not to do it or have mind altering substances. And again, it just kind of puts me at ease for my journey, where I think, oh, it's not that I can't drink alcohol, it's that I'm not meant to and take mind altering substances. So I just want to kind of put that out there for people, that you know, this is it's something that to be curious about, to look into it. But for people like me, maybe, you know, maybe stay a guardian.
Yeah, literally. I mean, some things, and this is where intuition and discernment comes into play as well. Oh my gosh, sorry, my birds. But
Oh,
this
maybe
way,
the bird's agreeing with me.
yeah, maybe. Because
You're
I
right,
don't know what
Nick.
to become so talkative. But yeah, intuition, discernment, and trust in yourself comes in as well, because not everyone's calling is the same. So if you're not called to do something, don't do it. You know, don't force yourself to do it, because you're going to create trauma for yourself, you know. And I put that same mindset into life as well. Like, some people will go into a job and they're not fulfilled, you know. It's not what's calling them, and it's not their purpose. You know, people ask me all the time, like, I just want to know my purpose. And I have to say, you know, sometimes some people don't have a purpose, not in a bad way, but sometimes your purpose is just to come here and experience. Earth is a school at the end of the day. Maybe in a past life, you didn't learn the lessons you needed to. Maybe you didn't learn a lesson in love. Maybe you didn't learn a lesson in self-confidence. Maybe you didn't learn a lesson in giving and sharing and being in community. And maybe that's why you've come here. But to say that you don't have a purpose, or you're looking for it's not all the time that you need to look for a purpose. Sometimes your purpose is just to experience, you know? And so, yeah, I feel
I love
like
it.
anything that you don't have a calling for. And also that everyone is a spiritual being. We are spiritual beings in a human body, you know. And your spiritual journey, everyone likes to say, oh, I started my spiritual journey at this age. Your spiritual journey started when you were born, when you came through the threshold of the womb, from the ethers into the physical world, you know. And the spiritual journey that people are speaking about is actually just their reawakening. reawakening to themselves. So yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I have no doubt that you're going to be very busy over the coming time. I'm really grateful that we met, and I'd love to be able to stay in touch with you and
Definitely.
maybe have a tea or a coffee face to face sometime soon. How can people get in touch with you, Angie?
So my Instagram is what the eyes can't see. And I have an Etsy page. It's Big Inner G INNERG 888.store on Etsy, and that has all my information on it as well. It's got my Instagram, my phone number, and all the other ways you can get in contact with me.
Well, if you email me all those things, I'll just put them in the Facebook feed so everyone can have them. So, but hey, I told you 45 minutes flies by. So how it just kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel it went today?
Really great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to be able to, share a part of who I am. And it's really in alignment with what I've been trying to do as well. So it came at a perfect time because I've just started trying to do interviews with other people as well. So it was,
Well, let's have you on again in a few months for a little update, and we'll see how things. Let's stay in touch, okay, Angie?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much for your vulnerability and your courage and being able to share your story today. And yeah, I love your light and what you're doing. So let's stay in touch. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Don't forget to join me on Thursday for another conversation around resilience and also a tough through tender gathering. So we'll see you all on Thursday. If not, we'll see you next Tuesday for another live. Thanks everybody. See you later. Bye for now.